My name is Ingela, and I work for the Erlang OTP team at Ericsson. And I will be giving you a preview of what will be happening in OTP 27 that is planned to be released in May this year. So firstly, we are introducing process labels. So a process label is a short description that doesn't have to be unique. Like a process registered name, for instance, it has to be unique, but the label can doesn't have to have that property. And if you look at OTP 26, for instance, in Observer, this is process listing, we can see that we have a TLS sender process, and we can see that from what the initial function is called. But we have no idea if this is a client process or a server process, just that it's sending TLS. So in OTP 27, we will be able to see from the label that it's actually a client process. And if we take a look at if we take a look in Observer on the supervision trees of applications, for instance, here we have the HTTP client application. And in OTP 26, we can see that under the supervisor, there is some process that handling some kind of HTTP connection. It might be a plain HTTP connection, or it might be TLS connection towards some server, but the only thing we can see is the PID. So in OTP 27 now, we will be able to see that it's actually an HTTPS connection towards erlang.org. And these process labels, they will also show up in crash reports. And big thanks to Thomas Abrahamsson for contributing the code for this. And to go on, we will say goodbye to all XML documentation files. They will be converted to Markdown files instead. And one of the reasons for doing this is that we want it to be easy to write and contribute to the documentation. So for instance, a documentation for an API module or for a reference manual could look like this. And here we are using our our new strings, the new triple quoted strings, so that we can write multi-line comments in the code. And also we want our user guides to be more visible. So if you look at the left column, you will see that in OTP 27, it will be much more obvious where the user guides are. And if you look at the big white space on the right, it will be that is mostly useless in OTP 26. We will have a listing of all the modules that are API modules. And if we take a look at the reference manual pages, we can now see that in the left column, the function that we are currently looking at will be highlighted. And if you take a look at the examples, you will see that they are much more colorful. Of course, changing the documentation for the better will be an ongoing project. And please don't expect everything to be perfect in OTP 27.0, but we hope that this will be a big step in the right direction. We also will add basic sigils to make it easier to provide documentation strings without have to specify that they are UTF-8 every time, and without have to doing very verbose escaping. So for instance, the first example here is the default, and it's actually equivalent to the second example. And the third and fourth example shows that you don't have to do so much escaping, and you can choose if you want the output to be a code point character list or a binary. And there are lots of more little things that you can do with sigils, so please have a look at our user guides to find out more. When it comes to TLS, we have done lots of refactoring, and one of the gains by this is to avoid unnecessary overhead in the hot application data code path. We also added some new algorithms, more specifically brain pool elliptic curves to TLS 1.3. These were already supported for previous versions. And we also will support OCSP stapling on the client side. And additional to that, we have added flexibility for customizing the key handling. And we want to thank Luca very much for contributing the code to that. And as always, we are trying to improve. And the error handling, we have continuous efforts to make errors more clear and consistent. And in OTP 26, we added the possibility to prototype your functions in the shell. And now in 27, you will also be able to save these prototypes to a module or to a file that will consist of the module. And also, we added functions so that if you prototyped many functions, you can list them. So see which ones did I add. And the same is true for types that can also be specified and listed in the shell. But that is not all. We have also made the help more accessible in the shell. So you can now type, for instance, list :fold_l and then hit meta H, and you will get the documentation for list fold_l. And you can, of course, use the arrows to navigate up and down in the documentation if it's lengthy. And as the second example here shows, we now also support multi-line prompts. Also worth mentioning is that we will have a JSON encode decode function. Big thanks to Mihao Musakala for contributing that. And we have enabled multiple trace sessions so that you can have different tools that use tracing and don't interfere with each other. And we added a monitoring mechanism for message queue length, as this is something that many people have wished for. And also, we will have a complete socket backend support for Yen TCP and Yen UDP, which will be an important step in trying to phase out the INET driver, even if I think there will be quite a few releases yet before we can really get rid of it. And to whom it may concern, most people or most programmers won't care, but anyway, floating point 0 plus 0.0 and minus 0.0 are different terms. So if you try to match them, they will not match equal. But of course, if you try to do a value comparison, they will be equal. I would also like to take this opportunity to encourage you to submit an experience talk to the International Conference of Functional Programming that has an ALAG workshop. And we want to get more exposures between the communities and promote ALAG and the BEAM technologies everywhere. You will need to submit a paper, but the experience report is much easier to do than a real research paper full academic. And I actually did this for this conference last year, and I can recommend the experience. And if you reach out to the program committee, they have said that they might help you or support you to make the paper. So please think about that, spreading the word in as many places as we can. And last but not least, I would like to thank all our open source contributors. Between OTP 26 and OTP 27, we will have merged around 200 open source pull requests from more than 70 different contributors. And one of our recurring contributors is Alexius José Lim. So thank you very much, José, for contributing back to Core Erlang OTP. And that was it. Thank you for listening.
Okay. We've got one question in the app, and it's basically, what is the status of the online certification status protocol? Is it still experimental in OTP R27?
Sorry, I didn't hear.
So,
could you
is the OCSP stapling support still considered experimental or stable with OTP 27?
Oh, it's considered stable in OTP 27 for the client side.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. Any other questions?
Yes.
All right. Please, thank the whole team for all the hard work you're all doing. And yes, we really hope to see you all in person. Milan, here in San Francisco, or Berlin. All right. Thank you very much, Ingela. Have a great evening.
Yeah, thank you.